This is Hello Cruel World, a psychological horror puzzler game that sees you in the role of a content creator who explores abandoned buildings and whatnot, with his latest stream taking place at the closed down Crab Grab, a restaurant about to be destroyed, and a restaurant that is much more than it seems. This releases August 1st for Quest 2, 3, and Pro headsets, as well as PC VR ones for roughly $20 US, and for this review, we checked the game out on the Quest 3. Horror and puzzlers seem to go hand in hand with VR, so let's see how this fares in this crowded genre. Hello puzzle lovers. Before we get to it, if you enjoy our content, a thumbs up really helps us out. Subscribing keeps you up to date on our content, and if you're so inclined, leave us a comment with your thoughts on this release. I'm Ryan for the VR Grid. Now let's do this. So while the game description does highlight the horror aspects of Hello Cruel World, this is a puzzler with some light atmospheric horror elements. As I said, you explore a restaurant and soon enough stumble across an underground laboratory that hints at its much more nefarious roots. I will say while the exploring stuff is cool, there are a few game design choices that do hamper that a bit. You'll have to open lockers and doors to find necessary items to complete a puzzle, though not all doors can be opened, so it's a little confusing at times what you can grab, what you can't grab, and considering most of the doors are locked anyways, it feels like there should be a better way to mark this up instead of just trying and failing at door after door after door, or just not being able to grab them at all, even though some you can, some you can't. So there is that minor annoyance, but it's not too frequent, I suppose. Standard first-person controls are the affair here, and while you can adjust your height, I found my height to be a little short in the game no matter what I tried while sitting, though outside of that issue, everything else fell in place. What makes Hello Cruel World unique is that you also have a live chat that accompanies you on this live stream. This can be toggled, but when up, just displays chat of, people reacting to what you're seeing or what's happening around you. It's kind of cool and also kind of lame. It was fun to pop up for a few seconds and see what they're saying, but I did find the screen to be a little more intrusive in VR, so I kind of just turned it off more often than not, and occasionally did forget about it, until I was stuck at a puzzle and was just kind of looking for any kind of help, which, for the record, the chat never helps. It's all just critiquing and saying things, and I will say the chat does read as relatively authentic from what I've seen, so it was kind of cool to see that, as I've never seen that in the game before, but it does feel more tacked on than an actual gameplay element. Now, as for the actual gameplay, outside of just exploring your surroundings, you'll be solving circuit-based puzzles over and over and over, though they do get steadily more complex to a point of madness, but more on that later. The game really does ease you into the puzzles, completing basic circuits by moving these nodes around that can transfer electricity from point A to B, or point A to B to C to D to E, so on and so forth, with each successful puzzle solved, opening up the next door or elevator or whatever to get you to the next area. Very early on in the game, you do happen to lose an appendage, though it's quickly replaced by a robot AI who gives you an artificial hand that can detect electricity and looks like it might be someone else's old dead hand. It's kind of gross, it's kind of funny, but it basically allows you to solve some puzzles and find out where electrical currents are, and especially comes in handy during the later stages when you're solving crazy multi-room puzzles. While some doors just need power, others require power at certain levels, be it negatively charged or positively charged, with some of those nodes you can carry having negative or positive values, throwing in some math to help make things more complex. There'll also be some sound puzzles later on too, that behave in basically the same way, with you having to connect multiple speakers in a chain to get from point A to whatever, and just like the electrical puzzles, there'll be some additional challenges added to the basic puzzles that make things more complex and more fun, at least in theory. As you get deeper and deeper into this complex, more of the story is revealed by the AI Alice, who's along for the ride with you, as well as computer terminals, many of which require batteries hidden throughout the environment to turn on, revealing an email or a phone call or some kind of message that just reveals more information about the past and what happened here before your arrival. It's pretty slick, definitely gave me some Portal vibes. This reminded me a lot of Red Matter, minus all the, space sci-fi stuff. With the game design just really taking you from puzzle to puzzle to puzzle, with some story sprinkled in throughout. Now I gotta say, after seeing the trailer, I was pretty stoked to play this as I thought it looked really good, and I tried damn hard to get a PC copy, but couldn't get one in time for this review. Though happily, the game looks great on the Quest 3, definitely one of the better looking games I've ever seen on the headset. I was immediately impressed by the presentation, and did not expect this kind of quality out of this game, and while the themes are different, this visually reminded me of the Red Matter series, which looks stunning on the Quest platform. The details in the environment are high, lighting effects are on point, though there's no dynamic lighting, which isn't really unexpected, but the environmental lighting is really well done, and I thoroughly enjoyed exploring every nook and cranny of this very dark and disturbing laboratory. Well, I will say, well, this looks pretty damn good. I did experience a fair bit of popping and some minor jank on the Quest 3. You can just tell like certain rooms would kind of like wouldn't load or would load late. Just a lot of popping as, you know, the game tried to obviously load the areas that mattered and kind of like get rid of the stuff that doesn't, just to keep the frame rates high. And I will say, as far as performance goes, I never really ran into any kind of frame rate issues. So what we're left with is basically a game that looks visually stunning at times, has a little bit of jank, but overall impressed me, so that's awesome. Audio design is on point, with nary a flaw to be found, save for the occasional audio cue maybe sounding a bit off as far as where it should be, but really minor. For the most part, everything sounded as it should. The game leaves you, for the most part, in like ambient silence, save for the whirs of electronics around you. The occasional background tune will kind of kick in or out here and there. Something suspenseful happens or dramatic, there might be a little quick musical score that pops up, but for the most part it's just you and your wits and the creepy sounds around you. Now, as much as I do actually love this game, I need to stress this is for puzzle lovers only, as what's here starts off pretty casual, gets challenging, and then gets really freaking hard. At the time of this video, I haven't fully beaten the game yet. I'm stuck in the last quarter of the game, but am slowly working through these rather complex puzzles, but they are testing me. There's no question about it. These things are really putting me through my paces, and I don't think it would be so bad if they weren't so samey. It's just circuit puzzles, and while they do vary and get more complex from the beginning of the game until where I'm at, it does kind of feel a little samey. Like the next puzzle is just a more complex version of the last puzzle. So in that regard, it might be best to space this out a little bit. But then again, I could just be a dummy here, and these puzzles aren't as hard as I'm making them out to be. But like I said, I've hit a wall, and as a guy who does like puzzle games, it is a bit frustrating just because I think the complexity of the puzzles is what's holding me back. On the flip side, you know, when you solve these things, you do feel like an absolute badass. There's no guides, there's no help, so there is that reward factor, but once again, I'll warn you guys, for myself, it gets really, really challenging to a point now where I just have to take breaks and walk away because it's getting kind of maddening. Besides that though, is a game that looks great, sounds great, has a fairly intriguing narrative, and I think fans of games like the Red Matter series will happily enjoy this, as it carries the same kind of quality and is pretty damn unsettling. I'm going to give Hello Cruel World a 7 out of 10. If you like VR puzzle games, you're probably going to like this. If you enjoyed this review, don't forget to do all the YouTube things to help us out. And that's it for this one. Thank you so much for watching.